All right, well, today we're going to be getting all of my cars ready to sell. I've had a few cars I wanted to sell for a while now, but with anything, if you've ever sold a car, you know that you find and remember all of the problems the car has right when it's time to sell it. And that's kind of where we're at. All the cars have problems and things that need to be changed or done or swapped before I can sell them, but it's time to sell some of them, you know? With cars, it can either be a revolving door or you can end up with a bunch of cars that sit. I don't like having cars that I don't use, and we're at capacity here. This thing's full, the garage is full, we're full. And I've still got a lot of cars I wanna build. So the ones that are sitting around, the ones that aren't being used or don't have as much of a purpose anymore, it's time to let them go. It's tough to do, but here we are. But first things first, we gotta fix them and get them ready and make sure they're dialed, so that way, whoever gets them has a good time. So, first order of business is some good old car musical chairs. We got a lot of moving and shuffling to do, so I'm gonna start there. I'm gonna pull this thing out of the shop, get it out of the way, and start unloading the vending machine and reorganizing and all that good stuff. Good to smell E85 smells when I fire this thing up now. You never know how long they're going to sit when you park them, so you have the good intentions of she's going to be here for a little bit, and then a month, 2 months later, battery's dead. Put this lift up and put it up there. Guaranteed the battery's dead. The big question is, does it still run? The last time this car got driven was almost exactly a year ago now, where I let Raldo and Josue drive it for the event. I got faith in the old girl. She's always been a trooper. So this is going to be the first car that we're going to get ready for sale. So first things first, we need to get these cars back on the lift. It's tough because I really want to drive this thing around and enjoy it some. I just kind of forget that I can until I go to move it. And, you know. For a quick rip down the road and back. Stalled it, and the battery's dead. I left the keys in the Monte Carlo because I was turning the thing on and off to put it in neutral. I gotta climb up here. They need 6 keys on those keys. Ignition on too. Yeah. So we got everything switched around. We've done our musical cars. So this is, like I said, car number 1 that we are gonna be getting rid of. It's a shame because I thought this was gonna be a forever car. When I got it, it already looked cool. It had all that done. Mechanically, it wasn't great. So I went through, did a top end rebuild, added some cams, cam gears, springs, all that good stuff. And then I decided to switch it to a carb setup, because the whole idea of this car was for it to be a nostalgia car. A car that you get in, you feel things, you know, mechanical, old school, nostalgia. And that was the idea. I mean, I even got a little leather tool pouch to keep in the car to adjust the carbs. Like, that was the idea. And you know, it's kind of got there. We did the cars, went through 3 different sets to find a set that worked well, and rebuilt the rear end, Tomei diff, bearings, new front bearings, really went through and sorted out all the mechanicals. But it's just, I don't drive it. At the end of the day, like, I just don't drive it. And if I'm not driving it, why am I storing it? Why am I keeping it? Why? It's a waste. Someone else can enjoy this car. So, that being said, it does have one major flaw. I have this cheap parts store fuel pressure regulator. It was just what I could get in time, and it just does not work. It just, if you leave the pump on, it'll just overflow the bowls of the carbs, fuel will pour everywhere, the car will start idling high, you gotta constantly turn the fuel pump on and off to drive it around. It's a mess. It doesn't work. I can't sell a car that doesn't work, so we need to fix it. We're gonna swap in this Holley return style fuel pressure regulator, add a return line back to the tank, and hopefully this should correctly regulate our fuel, then post it on the old marketplace. So that's the plan. Hopefully we can get this one knocked out quick and move on to the next one. All right, so here's our 2 regulators. You can see this is our old Spectre parts store one. This is our new Holley one. So you can see the big difference here is we have 3 full ports because this is out, out, and then in. Whereas on here we have in or out, and then return. So instead of just going in and then to the carbs, we're gonna come in to the carbs, and then also all that excess fuel is gonna get returned back to the tank. It's always a bit bittersweet when you tackle problems that you've had on the car for a while. And could be part of the reason that kind of led you to stop driving it and stop wanting it. And then you finally fix all those problems just in time to get rid of it. All right, feed in, feed out is hooked up. We just need return. We gotta route it. We'll probably should run it with the other line all the way back. So I started routing this return line and getting it installed. This is kind of the part of this I was dreading the most and why I've been kind of putting this off. But really, these cars are so simple. There's so little going on under here that routing this line, honestly, a piece of cake. I just routed it with the feed, zip tied it to the feed because the feed's all nicely secured and protected, and then routed up back to the tank, which was the trickiest part of it all. All right, new line is in, secured all the way up. And then we got our regulator. So let's see if this works. Drop it down, set base pressure, and see if it doesn't overflow the carbs for once. Oh, fingers crossed this does the trick. If not, even if it doesn't, it was a good upgrade to do. That whole non-return style system, not the way, not the way. not necessarily the results we wanted. Still overflowing, only out of the back ones. And the fuel pressure is pretty much perfect, like 2.5 pounds, which is pretty much right where we want it. I was worried because that regulator is 4 to 9, but it went down to 2.5. That's pretty much right where we want it. So I think there's got to be some trash stuck in one of the fuel bowls. Try to take them apart and see what we see. Yeah, this one's broken. If you look here, you can see these kind of got some spring to them. They're closed. This one doesn't have any spring. So I wasn't super optimistic that I could fix this without hard parts, but I adjusted the float bowl as much as I possibly could. I wasn't really happy with where it was at because it didn't open great, but it seemed as though it was hopefully closing. We need these to close off the fuel supply, otherwise it's just going to overflow. So it's kind of a Hail Mary. I don't know that this is going to work, but it's worth a shot. Moment of truth, take two. Well, I think we're going to need to get some parts in order to fix these correctly. Now, that leaves us with a dilemma, but we have other options. So we could try to keep making those work, or I did go get my old carb setups from Aldo and Josue's shop. So we got the Webers, and I got these bike carbs with this Piper Cross air filter kit. However, there is a downside. It's not as easy as just tossing them on, because while this manifold was originally built for those bike carbs, I had to drastically modify it to fit the spacing of these. So we're gonna have to re-modify it back to the way it was before to fit those back on here, which I don't have a problem with, but it just means we gotta commit one way or the other. You know, either leave it modified for those or re-modify it, unmodify it back to those. So I think I'm gonna try to make these work. I think this is our best shot at getting something working on this car so we can get it sold. The side benefit is I get to keep my super cool, unique flat slide carbs and save them for another project down the road. So I'm not complaining about that. So hey, kind of a win-win, especially if we can get those working correctly on all aspects. So that being said, I didn't expect to be whipping out the welder today, but we're gonna have to. So I'm gonna quit jibber jabbering, get this thing fired up, and we'll tear that apart, get that manifold modified, and then hopefully get this car running right on some bike carbs. The challenging part is going to be trying not to set myself on fire with all of the fuel that's trapped in here. So basically the flat slide carbs that we're taking off have a wider and an even spacing, whereas the new carbs, basically the two end carbs are close together and there's a big gap in the middle. So when I modified this manifold originally, it wasn't something I was proud of. It was one of those, I'm excited to get these on, I'm going to make something work situations. So I'm hoping that I can cut these back far enough to make it kind of close to as clean as it was originally, but I don't have any more of this material, and these pieces took me a long time to grind in the bevel for the bead at the end, so we've really only got one shot to get this right, because again, we don't have enough material if we mess it up. Oh, sick, I got these spot on. So welding these out is never going to be very pretty. I had to oval the pipes out a little bit more to get the offset with the other carbs. They're already oval because the ports on the engine are oval, so it goes basically from oval to circle, but now it's more oval to more circle. And it's just not, there's some giant gaps. So I tried to fill them with these little thin filler pieces, and it wasn't working, so I just had to work my way around the gap, walking it back and forth to try to fill the gaps. So again, not going to be a beautiful project, but this is way more of a get it done than a make it look pretty type of deal. We just got to get this welded so that these carbs fit. So after letting it cool down enough to wear my beat up welding gloves, I went ahead and started tossing this back on. Now, fortunately, to my happy surprise, the flange didn't get warped with all that welding. Modifying something and then modifying it back is just never something you want to do. It's never fun. But fortunately, it looks like this is all going to work and everything fits. All right, manifold's back on. Done and dusted. It looks about as bad as the last time I modified it. You can see what an okay weld would have looked like. But it seems, I'm pretty sure it's all good now. So that's good. At least we got it to work without needing any extra pieces. So aside from modifying the manifold, these should mostly fit the same as the other setup. They've got the same size fuel line entry point. That's in the same spot. Really the biggest thing is the throttle cable. It picks up at a totally different point. So I made this bracket for the last setup, and it looks like it's going to work. I have to bend it, give it a little extra bend, a little kick down to get the cable kind of pointed in the right direction so it's not binding up, and so that it gets the cable close enough to reach the throttle cam. That's one of the challenging things about bike carbs is they have a really small throttle cam and the pedal travel, and point is, throttle cable is really the last thing, and we've got that hooked up, and it looks like it's going to work. So the last thing is just to take a chance and try to hook these ports up to vacuum and see if that helps with the cold starting and the choke situation. I don't know if it will. It might. It's worth a shot. Prime it, fire it, see what happens. We're so close. I'm going to have a well-earned Mr. Pibb if this works. I gotta open the door. I don't know where these are adjusted to. May start, may not. I'm gonna give them, oh, we're leaking from somewhere. I do have one more trick up my sleeve. What is it leaking out of? So not only did we not get our cold start, but now we are leaking fuel. It's from a different spot. It's from the feed in. It's not from the overflow. But obviously, we've got a fuel delivery problem that is making our life complicated. Fuel pump's meant for like a small box Chevy. It's meant to flow a lot more fuel than we need in this application. So I'm gonna I have a motorcycle fuel pump for the motorcycle carburetors that I'm gonna put on and just see if that helps. So I got this motorcycle fuel pump originally with the original bike carb kit that I put on, but decided to go a different route. So I've thought about putting this pump back on for a while. It's better suited for these, and it's just now's as good a time as any. It's one of those things that I think could solve our problem. It's not too big of a deal to swap, so it's worth the effort. So I put the same plug that was on the other fuel pump on so that we could plug and play swap between them. And then I just needed a little bit longer line since both ports are on the same side of this fuel pump, and then we could get it hooked up, roughed up in place as just a proof of concept to see if it works. So after that, I went ahead and tackled this fuel leak. That's the whole reason we swapped to this carb was to fix the fuel leak. So I got that sorted out, just a bad O-ring. But then we had a new problem. We had kind of the opposite problem. Instead of too much fuel, it seems like we're not getting enough fuel. You can get it to fire up on starter fluid, but it won't stay running and you can't tap the throttle. So called it a night, came back, regrouped. Same problem still there. Unfortunately, the car did not fix itself. So I checked the basics. I went ahead and put fuel in it. A lot of times cars are just out of fuel. It was low. I also swapped the original fuel pump back on because we know that worked. And when we still had a seemingly the same fuel delivery problem, I realized it had to be our vacuum line routing. And lo and behold, what I did to try to fix the cold start made it not start. All right, I think I found the combination that seems to work. The bike fuel pump with those carbs without the vacuum lines hooked up. We're not leaking fuel anymore. I got that pump with these carbs, which are the original carbs that I got for this thing. And then I came across this deal for these Webers. I bought these, set up the pump situation for these, and these weren't great. Then I put those back on, then I ended up with the flat slides. Moral of the story is I should have put that pump in from the start. The pump that we had was just way too much for this engine, even with the return style regulator. So hopefully everything's sorted. Now, time to go drive it. Than we were. Let's try to let it idle and see what happens. I'm gonna check, make sure it's not leaking fuel. All right, well, it only took, I don't know, 3, 4, maybe 5 fuel pump swaps, modifying a manifold, different lines, fixing leaks. But it's running the best it ever has. For sure, this thing is running mint. I love the look of these carbs on here with the air filter. I'm very happy. I'm super, super stoked to have this thing running well, fires right up, idle's consistent. It is a little bit lean on the top end, so I think it needs some larger main jets, but I'm gonna sell this car with the Weber setup because this was always meant to go on this car. You can't get these manifolds anymore. This is really what the car needs to have on it. So ideally, someone who gets the car will wanna tinker with it, refresh these, do a little tune and put these on the car as the end result, but be able to drive it around on the bike carbs for now. Or if they want to, they can tinker some more with this, get it running even better on these. But for right now, it's a fully functioning, running, driving car that's not leaking fuel. So that was really the goal. We're done, we're moving on. But hopefully we can stamp it done and dusted and post this thing on Marketplace and get it out of here. So hammer down on the rest. This thing still starts. So rare to see the shop with no cars in it. 8.6 vet truck. So these two are going in the shop next. All right, well, we got both cars in, both cars racked up on the lifts, and it's time to dive in. Now, you might be wondering why we're getting rid of both cars. We're not. We're only getting rid of one of these cars. It's a little bit different scenario than the 8.6, where I just didn't drive it. I do drive both of these cars all the time. I drive them every single day. I love them. They work great for what they're intended to do. I really don't have any complaints. It's just, I've had kind of a personal rule that I don't ever want to own two of the same car. There's only so many garage slots. There's only so much time to drive them. There's only so much time to work on them and repair them and maintain them. Having two of the same car is just one less cool car that I want to experience that I can try. You know, it's just one of those slots taken up like in a video game when you only get so many garage slots. So if I was gonna have two of the same car, it had to be for a good reason, and it was. I bought this car first, and it was my first dabble into the newer sporty car thing. I was kind of a BMW hater before I got this car, and I fell in love with it. Everything I hoped and dreamed it would be. It's fast, very practically fast, it handles well. It's fun to drive, it's exciting to drive, but it's also super comfortable. You can just drive this thing to the grocery store, it feels like a Camry. So it did everything I wanted it to do. I've done countless dragon trips in it. I've taken it to track days. It's been great. It has really been a phenomenal car. I loved it so much. Now, when it came time to get another seat time car, instead of getting a Z or getting a Vet that I'd have to cage to take on Drift Week, I decided to get another F80 and build it into my drifting seat time car. And this car has been great. You know, me and Josue threw this thing together in 2 weeks, shipped it across the country. The first time I drifted it was in Arizona at the start of Drift Week. It did all of Drift Week with no issues, and now it's a great all-around car. Everything works like stock. It drives nice, it's comfortable, but it drifts phenomenally well. And I can just load tires in the back and drive it to the track. No trailer, no nonsense. So this car has done everything I wanted it to do. And they both serve different purposes: grip driving, drifting. However, this last Drift Week, we specifically were gonna stop at the Dragon. So I decided to get a matching set of sticky tires that I normally run on the front for the back, so I'd have a grip setup to use on this car at the Dragon. Now, what I ended up doing was at pretty much every track throwing the grip setup on and doing some grip laps, since we did almost exclusively fast road courses. And I did not expect this car to handle very well. I thought, hey, it'd be fun to do some grip driving, but it's not gonna be good at it. But to my surprise, this thing actually is really good at grip driving. Very balanced, very easy to drive at the limit. Great. And especially when we went to the Dragon, where I have a ton of kind of comparison driving in this car, this thing really wasn't that much, if any, slower. The only thing that made it a bit slower is the fact that it's a 6-speed manual versus a 7-speed dual clutch. So after that trip, I was really faced with the dilemma, because I can do pretty much everything I want to do with one of them, with this car. So I decided to get rid of this car. Now, you might be wondering why they're both on the lift. Well, this car is a base model. I mean, it is what they call a stripper pack. It's got cloth seats. It doesn't have any, any parking sensors, backup cameras, nothing. It is a base model car. This car is a little bit newer, a little facelift, way more features, every option, all the packages, all the cameras, all the sensors. So naturally, when I got the nicer parts, they'd go on this car, and the lower tier, lower cost parts would go on this car. However, if this is the one we're keeping, we might as well put all the fancy stuff on this one, put the more basic stuff on this one before we sell it. So the first thing we're gonna swap is the exhaust system. This one has a stainless Turner Motorsports exhaust. You can see it's quite dirty. This car has been absolutely thrashed. Look at how filthy. This is all dirt and grime. You can see my poor diff cover from dirt dropping and slamming this thing into the ground. This thing has taken a thrashing. But that being said, this car has a really nice exhaust. I don't have any complaints about the exhaust. It sounds good, fits good, all that. However, this car has a better one. It has the same Turner exhaust, except in titanium. So this exhaust is full front to back titanium. You can see how it's colored in from the different areas of heat. This thing is just a work of art in my eyes. I really like this exhaust. I was really excited for it when I got it. So I can't bring myself to let it leave with the car. We're gonna swap this one to that car and vice versa. That's why we have them both on the lift, so that we can just swap back and forth. So let's probably pull this one first. Man, I just realized my plan was to do this with my transmission jack. But I loaned it to Alberto, and I even told him, I knew this would happen, I'd forget to get it back. I even told him, I said, you gotta bring it back as soon as you're done with it, because otherwise I'm gonna forget, and I'm gonna need it, and I'm not gonna have it. Here we are. It's not his fault. I forgot to bug him about it, and now we don't have it. So we might have to do this in pieces, which is okay. It's not the end of the world. Dang it. I knew this was gonna happen. So since we don't have the transmission jack to use in conjunction with the pole jack, I was going to try to take this thing out in pieces, but as soon as I started undoing some of these clamps, I realized that was going to suck. That was not going to be very fun, and it was going to be very time consuming. So we're going to try to just wrangle this thing out in one piece and hope that we don't drop it on ourselves, because if we get it right, it's going to be way faster to do it this way. Titanium one is way lighter. I needed to get in here and replace these anyway. You can see they were leaking, and you could hear an exhaust leak. I didn't have replacements when I did this exhaust. So luckily I was able to get these donut gaskets from the parts store, because I totally forgot about them again, just like I did, and how I ended up reusing those in the first place. And then once those were swapped, it's time to move on to pulling the titanium exhaust. Now I realized immediately I'm going to have to pull this diffuser. It's technically the same one, but it tucks under the muffler a lot more, and there's no way we're getting this thing out without pulling this diffuser off first. You can see how much lighter it is. I'm holding this one with one hand. All right, both are out. Just a quick comparison while we got them side by side. Titanium versus stainless. Looks pretty cool to see them both side by side. This one's so dirty. So with how easy it was to take both of these out, I didn't think installing them would be this challenging, but it was tricky because the pole jack kept wanting to rotate as you would lift the exhaust up, and all the weight in this exhaust system is at the back. And then on top of that, the pole jack had to be in the exact right spot before you lifted it, because you couldn't get it to, it doesn't have wheels. You couldn't slide it back and forth. So just getting it started at the front, which is all I was trying to do, was a challenge. But eventually I had to zip tie it as temporary fall support, and then I finally got it up in place enough to get a nut started on the front so that I could start working it up into place. And once we got over the hump of getting it just up roughly started in place, everything else is a piece of cake. You know, the way BMW does these hangers where everything bolts on. And one thing that surprised me is I didn't have to reorient any of the pipes. All the caulking was the same. I didn't have to loosen any of those clamps. So really, we flew through it. Once we got it up into place, piece of cake. Bolt in all the hangers, tighten up some of the clamps that I loosened when I thought I was going to take it out piece by piece, and then just make sure everything's good to go and we're done and dusted. So all in all, not too bad, besides some initial struggles. Oh, jeez Louise, 30 minutes. Battery's almost dead. Probably almost out of memory card, but one down, one to go. We're just going to do the old snap trick on this one. Battery died right as I was saying that. Set. All right, got this car down, got the doors open. Let's fire them up and see A, if they work, B, what they sound like. I left the servos from each car and each car's exhaust, so they have each other's servos for opening the valve. So we gotta make sure those still work. I don't know if it's gonna get mad or not. It could. You never know with these things. All right, let's start with this car. Cold start. Wow. But you heard the valves open and close. All right, cool. Mission successful. Now, the other parts that I intended on swapping between these two cars were the intakes and the charge pipes. So these charge pipes are Mishimoto charge pipes. These intakes are VSRF intakes. So they're just basically 3-inch aluminum. And then they come up here and they have these cone filters in the grill, which I gotta say does look pretty mean. You can see them even from a distance with the red filters especially. However, this car has a much nicer system. It's got AMS charge pipes, but the biggest thing is the intakes. These are really the crown jewel of this car. These are AMS carbon fiber intakes. They are all carbon, 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 carbon. This is a magnetic lid. There's a cone filter in there, and then there's basically ducting and a snorkel up to the front with a big bell mouth right here on each side. This is a phenomenal kit. When I installed it, I was absolutely blown away. So I wanted to swap it to that car, but two things. Thing one, these kind of suit this car more than the kind of drift car vibes. Or that's what I'm telling myself, because reason two, it is a lot of work to swap these intakes out. You have to pull the entire front end off of both cars. Headlights, bumper cover, core support, bracing. There's a lot involved in these front mount intakes, either one. So I'd have to do that to both cars, swap them, put them back together. So I think as of right now, I'm gonna leave these with the car, which means we don't really have anything left to swap between these two cars. It was mainly the exhaust. I am gonna lower this thing. It's a monster truck, it's been a monster truck since the Dragon, we raised it. But other than that, pretty well wrapped up. We might tame this car down some, take some of the stickers off. I was thinking about taking the roof rack off for now. The idea was that this car could be flashy because we had the clean, not flashy car to drive when we didn't want to deal with the flashiness. But now that this car is leaving, it's kind of like you need to settle this car up a bit potentially. So that being said, for those of you who are interested, here's the rest of the rough game plan. I'll give you a try to be quick run through. So obviously selling that car, selling the 8.6. Still got two little things to do that, but it's pretty much ready to go. 8.6 is ready to go. List them, sell them, boom. RX-7, waiting on an engine. Engine is ordered and in production. Got to decide on turbos, got the electronics package. Need to decide on transmission, but we should get rocking and rolling on that soon. Miata is going to come down for a refresh, just a basic refresh plus some really cool idea I have that may or may not work. Body-wise, since it's already beat up, then we've got a couple of really big, cool events that we need to use this thing for this year. After that, rebuild, because the Monte Carlo needs an engine. Now, I was thinking about building a replica of the Miata engine. It's great. It's a 6.2 liter aluminum block, rect port heads, all the valve train stuff. It's a good engine. So I was thinking about building the same thing. But then I was like, well, why don't I just take the one out of the Miata, refresh it with rods and pistons for forced induction, put it in that, and then we can put a NASCAR engine in the Miata dog box while we're there, give us an opportunity to rebuild it. Put it on a diet, tube front, tube rear, rear radiator, repaint, blah, blah, blah. So hopefully the Miata will be getting, it deserves it, man. This car's put in work for 5 years and it's never going anywhere. Might as well give it some love. So there's that. Obviously, plans of Monte Carlo. Got some stuff coming for the bus, doing an audio system for driving, got some things to fix, got new batteries for it, need to fix the generator, tidy up the power steering lines, and then it should be ready to go. Need to do race trailer upgrades. That's probably what's next. You can see I got a stack of tires sitting right there. Need to get that thing set up and ready to go because race season is not only on the way, it is here and it's started. So we need to have that trailer good, ready to go so we can start going to events with it. Tow rig upgrades, audio system and maintenance, that kind of stuff. I'd like to do a built transmission and wheels and tires, but we'll see how the cards fall on that. So vehicles and then shop. We have some major upgrades coming for the shop. I think I'm gonna go ahead and plywood the lower 8 feet of the walls. It's something that was suggested in the beginning. I wanted to do it. We were so head down in the vet bill, we didn't have time. So I like to do it now. It's gonna be a lot more work with all the electrical boxes and stuff, but I'd like to get that done because the next thing is the 2 lofts. And I'm finalizing ordering all the stuff to do the lofts. So we'll have the lofts done soon, which means we can completely reorganize this place and maybe pour a pad out back for some shelves there. We got a lot to do on the shop front. We got a lot to do on all fronts. Oh, and buying the replacement for this car once it sells. Got kind of a mini build plan for that. That involves me maybe also buying a Supermoto. So there's a lot coming down the pipeline. I've been trying to knock out all the stragglers, and as you may have noticed, all of my cars run and drive with the exception of the RX-7 because it's a bare shell. So I'm pretty happy with where we're at as far as getting kind of the straggler project sorted out so that we can move on and start diving into the new stuff because we have a lot of new stuff to dive into. So that is the plan, the rundown. If you stuck it out this long, thank you. I appreciate you guys. You make this YouTube world go around. You allow us to do what we do here. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate you watching the videos, liking, subscribing. If you're not, you don't have the notifications thing. If you're not subscribed, think about it. If you want to, it's up to you. Not gonna push you. Subscribe button, click it, boom. And then the bell. I have had a lot of people that missed a couple videos, so click the bell and you'll get notified for all the videos. I tried to talk fast, not my forte. Okay, that's it. I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna probably car shovel and clean up, call it a night. So I do wanna say thank you for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I already said this. I'll see you next time. Goodbye, guys.